Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is entertainer Torill and artist Michael Lawrence. Torill is the author and star of Rendezvous with Marlene. She'll talk to us about Dietrich after we learn about her. Norwegian-born Torill started her career when she was 17. At that time, she won a national competition which led to recording contracts and appearances on radio and television. The critics in Berlin raved about her when she played Sally Bowles in Cabaret at this famed 3,000-seat Friedrichstadt Palace. Did I say it right?
By Jove, that was close.
Then your career took off, and all of a sudden you stopped. What happened?
Well, I didn't quite stop completely, but I did get married. I mean, why should I be different, right? And it didn't work, so it was a brief marriage, and I had it like a hobby. And then I went back to show business.
So you were like playing another role?
I was playing another role. In fact, I was a travel agent there for a while.
Very
Believe it or not, yes.
Well, the travel agency then must have brought you to America.
No, it was one of those things that artistically, I just didn't feel that I completely fitted in that particular time. Folk songs were in at the time.
Oh, is that right?
And I love folk songs, but that's not my bag. And obviously also my marriage had something to do with it. And then I decided I wanted to get out. So I came here. I got separated, but I didn't separate whatever we owned together with no money, no work permit, nothing, and landed in San Francisco.
Did you know anyone there?
The only persons, it was between Peking and San Francisco, right? I didn't, I'm serious. Peking, I didn't speak Pekingese, right? But
Pekingese.
Right. So I had a Norwegian girlfriend living in the Bay Area. So I figured I could stay with her for free, you know, and that's how, seriously.
When you were performing in Berlin, was that in English or in German?
German. I sang songs in English, though. In fact, that was very peculiar because usually they would not, you know, always let people do exactly what they want. And Friedrichstadt Palast at the time was in East Germany.
Friedrichstadt Palast?
Friedrichstadt Palast.
Yes. It was in East Germany.
It was in East Germany. And, but
there was no problem for you being there?
I don't know what it was. I could sing any songs in English I wanted, or of course.
But I mean, going across the border and working over there?
They loved to get visitors from the West, but you were followed everywhere. I mean, I had people all around me, you know. But I said,
when you came to San Francisco, you didn't have people following you. It must have been a whole different kind of freedom.
Well, it was wonderful, obviously, and I was very lucky because the first and actually the only place that gave me the chance to audition was at the time Alexa's Restaurant on Nob Hill.
I remember that. It was very posh.
It was beautiful.
Very chic.
Beautiful.
And it was like a tent? Was it like draped?
Well, you remember all the statues inside, Lauren Bacall, you know, that was the contractor's favorite artist. So, I mean, it was just exquisite.
So what did you do? You went in as Torill?
I went in one night. I went in one night and had a drink in the bar because I had heard about it and they had a continental flair. And my friend said, this is a place that you should be singing. And I said, I don't have a work permit. So I went down there and I sat, had a drink, and I ordered gin and Coke with lime. And they looked at me and they said, what in the world is that? Where do you come from? So I told them. And the cocktail waitress was from Sweden. And make a long story short, they knew then who I was, and I was dressed like a slob because I didn't plan to go there that night. I just wanted to see what the place looked like, you know what I mean? And then the rumors went upstairs to the manager, and he came back and tapped me on the shoulder, and he says, so what do you do? He's French. I said, well, I'm a singer. Yes. What do you do? He said. And I looked in these two big brown eyes. I said, I'm a singer. And he says, well, why you should be on Broadway? And I'm thinking, the man thinks of Broadway in San Francisco, not on Broadway. You know what I mean? That's not the best place.
Stripping.
Yeah. No, it was because I wasn't dressed up. Anyway, they gave me the chance and I got the job. And
you were a big success there.
I actually was a big success
You
there.
stayed a long time there.
Yes.
And then you came to Los Angeles.
Yes. You know, you have to move. And that was also very interesting because talking about Dietrich, when I came to San Francisco, the only thing I heard all the time was, my goodness, she looks like a young Dietrich on stage. And I never even thought about it.
Oh, that was the beginning.
That's the beginning of the Dietrich thing. And since it was an international place, I started singing her songs in German.
And up there you sang them. But then when you came to Los Angeles, you were at the back lot, which was like a disco kind of thing.
No, the back lot has also a theater.
Oh, it had that's right. That's right.
I had that was a whole different thing.
So did you do cabaret style songs there?
Absolutely.
Ah. Were you booked before you came here, or did you just take another chance?
Just put myself on a plane, you know. I mean, it's crazy. It's completely crazy.
Well, you started then, little by little, discovering this Dietrich in you.
Well, then what happened was that my agent at the time got a breakdown that said that they're looking for a Dietrich for the film The Day the Bubble Burst, which was about the crash on Wall Street in 1929.
Was that like the late 80s? The day the bubble burst?
Yeah. Well, it was mid-80s, I think it came out, because then everything happened. But anyway, so they were looking for one to play Dietrich, and it was a set within the set, because in 1929 they were filming The Blue Angel in Germany. And so I got the role, and then I incorporated that in my nightclub act. So she has been with me for a while, but it's not until when she died 2 years ago that the phone rang off the hook. It was just like, do a show about her. You
then were still singing cabaret in Los Angeles, and something else took you to Las Vegas. Who took you to I'm following your career everywhere.
I know, you're very good at this. Well, they were looking for a star for Moulin Rouge from Paris, that they moved over to Las Vegas to the Hilton. And I did a TV show in Toronto where ABBA from Sweden and Victor Borg and all these people were. And one of the dancers in the show said, call Torill, she would be perfect for this.
Is that right?
And in the meantime, I had heard about it. So what I did was do the same thing. And they called and said, please, we're coming into Los Angeles. Will you audition for us? And I did. And I was the first star on Moulin Rouge for 6 months in Las Vegas.
Did you sing in French?
I sang in French.
Oh, you did?
Absolutely.
Did they think you were French? Were they looking for a French person?
They probably were, but see, I fooled them.
Mm-hmm. You have done so much international travel, too, with your work. Do you like settling down here in Los Angeles?
I always like, when I get to a place, I always enjoy seeing new things, but traveling in itself, I can be without. I have traveled, so, you know, I like to sit sometimes just in my house and look at the walls.
Let's start a little more of the Dietrich phenomenon. How did you actually decide to start writing, even though she was following you around? What was the process for Rendezvous with Marlena?
Well, the last thing, and when I started to read about her, was when I was playing the Fairmont in San Francisco, but just before she died, and they said, why don't you do an evening with Dietrich? And I said, well, maybe I should do that. But then I didn't know whether I should sit and tell anecdotes or become her. Or be her, you know what I mean? And that's when hell broke loose, because now I started to read books about her, but I still didn't have time to do what I have been doing now. But after she died, that's when they really said, it's time for you to write a show or do something. And I haven't written shows before like this. I mean, I put together my own acts, but this is a little bit more than that.
Did you get to meet her? Did you ever get to meet her? Did you ever get to see her?
Nobody got to see her. The last 10 years of her life, she was literally basically in bed.
So you didn't get to talk to like people who were taking care of her, or how did you research it?
I was so lucky. I met one of her closest friends. I have met several people that knew her personally. I got I mean, the library of films became available to me. I read all the books, and then one person led to another person, which leads to this book, for instance, Dean Goodman's book. He was married to Maria Riva. That was her, yes, that was her first husband.
Maria Riva was the daughter
of Marlenis.
And also, she wrote a book. And you refer to that book. I think it's wonderful the way you refer to it in your act,
yes,
or in your play.
That was a strong book.
Was it all true?
According to her, it is.
But according to you on stage, as Marlena, you keep saying she was wrong about this. You give your side of it.
Yes.
Was that the real? I mean, do you think that was Marlena's side of it?
I know that is Marlena's side of it. I mean, like I said, I have some close friends that knew her very intimately, so I know she would be twirling in her grave if I mean, she would have died if she had not already been dead, you know what I mean?
How you start out with this speech impediment that she had. I don't know if very many people know that she had that speech impediment.
She had a problem with her R's.
And you start on stage. What is something that, the way you call attention to it?
I say that in the beginning, Hollywood drove me crazy. Ever since I came to this country, I've had problems with my R's. Not R's, R's. Yes, she did have. She couldn't say R's, so she cut it out like the English do a lot, or had a soft French R, or said W. Crazy.
Did it show up? Did you see it when you were in watching those films?
Absolutely.
You did see it.
And the funny thing is, the more I watch her, you know, I'm laughing. I'm laughing through the films because I know all her little tricks. Look up, look down.
You've
all
learned
the stuff.
them all.
I know now exactly what the director told her to do. So it's so predictable. Now she's going to look this, up and down. You know, all of this stuff was taught by her director.
When part of the play says you were put into not you, Dietrich was put into competition with Garbo.
Yes.
And yet Garbo was an actress. Dietrich could sing and dance and move. What was that competition? Didn't she feel like she had an edge over Garbo?
Well, Garbo at the time was already established in Hollywood, and she was a star, and she was very beautiful. And Marlene, it was competition because of the visual aspect of it, as well as the acting part of it. They both came from Europe, and MGM had Greta Garbo, and of course Joseph von Sternberg fell madly in love with Marlene and made her the icon for Paramount. So it was like one of those, and in fact Marlene said until she died she never met Garbo.
Is that right? Well, the other thing is
But it isn't true, because Stan Freeman told me that he was in a party with both of them.
And Stan Freeman is your musical director.
Which leads right to Stan. I'm so lucky to have Stan there, because Stan was Marlene's musical director for 12 years.
And he also is yours. And he must have been able to give you some anecdotes and...
Well, the thing is with Stan, Stan came in after everything was written, but whatever rapport I have with him is mentioned, is basically what happened to him.
The one thing, when we're going back to Garbo and von Sternberg loving Marlene so much, why did he make her into that bisexual kind of mystique, or was she really like that?
She was.
She was.
She had women before she even got married. I mean, in very early age in Berlin, the moral was just laissez-faire. It was a deep Depression era subculture.
I see.
And
so he didn't really create it.
No.
He just made her look like that. Oh, I've got to show these pictures before we leave, because this is you on stage.
Well, somebody has to do it.
I want to show that this is the one that gets us into that kind of mystique of how she looked. You wear tails?
Yes, I do. In the second act, I come out in my tails.
And we have one more.
This is,
Now, this is like kind of cross-culture, right, with your cigar?
Yes. I smoke cigars.
You actually smoke it on stage because we can smell it in the audience.
I know, yeah.
And before we leave, has your name always been Torill, one name?
No, I have a last name, but it's too complicated.
Ah,
so
is that it?
I have more problems than I need, so I just use Torill.
And one of the other things I thought, which was really fabulous, is you say you create a recipe for life. Or she says, does she say it or do you say it?
Well, I wrote the line, but I say create your own recipe of life, yes.
And I think that's fabulous. And you have created a recipe for us all to watch. And thank you for being with us. Thanks. Don't go away. Michael Lawrence, you see his paintings on the set, will be with us in just a few seconds. Thanks, Torill.
Thank you. Oops.
Don't leave yet. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and we're back with artist Michael Lawrence. Michael was born in Los Angeles and attended Beverly Hills High, right here where we are today, the Bard College in New York, and UCLA. He's shown in galleries across America and is in national and international private collections. He's in the Los Angeles County Museum of Art's collection, as well as the National Museum in Stockholm, Sweden. Also, we have lots of his work on the set. It sounds like you're an LA artist, Michael, but you've traveled so much. Tell us about the travels and how they came.
Well, my parents went to Europe when I was young, and my father was an actor, became an overnight celebrity in Rome when The Asphalt Jungle came out, which was one of John Huston's mid-career films, and they thought he was an Italian.
Is that right?
So he couldn't leave Italy. His career was impounded in Italy for a while, and my parents sent for my sister and I, and we went to Rome, and of course it was the beginning of an enchantment with art and antiquity and the romance of being in a place that seemed like, who could have invented this? It was wonderful.
I know. Did you go to school there?
I went to school there. I went to Notre Dame International School for Boys, among other American schools.
Was it an English-speaking?
It was an English-speaking school with American instructors who were the brothers. It was a Jesuit school, and interesting. So
that's good. It gave you a really varied background.
Very well-rounded background, very well-rounded. And it was wonderful, actually, because there were some very interesting professors there, and they formed a kind of background that later on led me to appreciate the films of Fellini.
Oh, well, you did. You were interested in film work at the time. Were you also interested in painting?
I was. In fact, I had my first show in Rome when I was about 11, 12.
Your first show?
I had my first show. Honestly,
Michael.
it was a real show. It was a real show at the Colony Restaurant, and I sold 2 pieces to total strangers.
Fabulous.
And then I was commissioned to do a piece, which I resented because I was finished painting, and I didn't want to paint at that time anymore. I have to work now. I have to go back and do a commission
At 12
piece.
years old?
At 12 years old, I was ready to put down the brushes, but for a short time only.
And then you came, then what happened? Your parents came back to America?
My father came back to America, and shortly thereafter I started attending, as you said, Beverly Hills High School, and where I began doing my sculpture.
We have some of the sculpture on the set, but you started early in high school.
I started early in high school. In fact, before high school, I did a little wire sculpture of Charlie Chaplin, who I fell in love with in Rome. I went down the street, and there was this film, Modern Times, and I walked in, and it was an enchantment, and the kind of energy of Chaplin and the improvised situations, and especially his song and dance routines.
You've mentioned 2 people. You've mentioned Fellini and you've mentioned Chaplin.
Yes.
And I can see that in your work. I can see the surrealism of Fellini, or the kind of differentness, and then that kind of whimsical movement of Chaplin.
Exactly. And that's what I fell in love with. And
was that of influence all the way through?
Definitely an influence. Absolutely. Because it just struck me as so funny. There's something so ethereal in a way about Chaplin, like Ariel and Tempest, or points out the truth. It seemed to me, and I like that humor, the lightness of it, the gentleness, of making humanity trying to see its own idiocy, but he does it in such a gentle way, like when he's playing Hitler, and he's bouncing the globe up in the air with his finger, and then he jumps around, and then he bounces it with his fanny a couple of times.
But this is just so, it's a theme that's reoccurring in all of your drawings. I see that so much. Do we have, like, does this kind of depict a little of the whimsy?
Yeah, I hope so. It's a tragic story about a fire on the island of Hydra. And what I try to do is incorporate universal myths, but the lightness and the whimsy comes through the cats at the bottom. The cats are looking, oh, these poor human beings. They can't even, they always start fires and we have to run around. It's, so the cats are the Chaplin-esque quality in that particular piece.
We've gone from Rome to Los Angeles. Now we're in Hydra.
Yes. That was a fast jump.
I know a lot went on before you went to Greece, which is a very recent occurrence in your life. I think it's a new spot for you.
That's true.
And let's get to Hydra. Let's get to Greece some other way.
Okay,
let's just start with
wherever you want to go.
Let's start with these. Yes. Or maybe this tells us a little bit about the Italian influence that you were talking about.
Yes, the Italian influence. When I was back in America, and naturally I missed Italy. So a fast way to go to Italy was to go to see a Fellini film.
I see.
And you were reminded that in Italian, practically 3 words could express the whole culture in a certain sense. The language itself. Già, poi, e dunque.
Is that all you had to learn?
Well, there was more, but the longest word in the Italian language is precipiti volissi volme volmente. And they also say you never use it.
Is that
right. You don't need it. It's like a string of spaghetti.
Right.
But there's so much humor in the Italian spirit. And in this painting, Casanova is just lighting on a balcony. And he's glancing at this beautiful young lady that he sees, standing on an adjacent balcony. And it's just that one moment that took about 2 months to paint. But it's that kind of sensibility that's important to me.
But this tells you Venice. You look at it and you know Venice, and it tells you. Now behind you, or right behind you, tells me Hydra.
Yes.
Tells me Greece.
It was another entirely different experience. I'd never been to Greece in the summer, and it was my first time there. And the heat it penetrates your whole being. So I started to use primary colors because they represented the intensity of the heat. And of course, the beautiful bougainvillea suggested the red. And of course, you're surrounded by blue. And there's a joy to it. Let me show you another one, Joan, that I don't want to run through this too quickly, but unfortunately, Fellini, you see, as he's stepped into the world
is this in Greece?
This was actually painted in Paris on the way to Greece.
But it does have that joyful kind of the acrobats, and you were talking about Cirque du Soleil, how enchanted you were by that.
That's true as well. Cirque du Soleil was a wonderful experience for me, and that sense of balancing and the acrobatics, the physical acrobatics of Chaplin that I tried to represent in a way in my watercolors, the gesture. And it's gesture that I find fascinating.
Let's see the next one.
Yeah, okay.
Because you're talking about being influenced by actors, by movies, and yet I see so much of the Impressionists in your work.
Well, I try and combine things to express something. You have to take from different areas.
I mean, to me, I see Chagall, I see Picasso,
Well, let me ask you, do you see William Blake in this? Because while I was painting it, I was thinking of William Blake and his wonderful, simple poetry, and also the animals, his poems to the animals.
I see romance in this.
And romance, okay.
I see romance. I see a different kind of a softness than the other paintings.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what your influences are if you know what you want to express. It's like Picasso once said, since you brought up his name, if I run out of blue, I use red. So surely there are a lot of people that, there are always influences, and I enjoy them.
Do you actually, it seemed like you were very conscious of film being an influence on you. Is that because
Well,
you're from
that's-
here or because of your parents' background?
Well, my
or-
father's an actor, and he was always vocalizing, and you know, and in fact, I once performed for John Huston, so I have a little bit of theatrical.
Did you ever think of being an actor rather than a painter?
I did think of it, but painting allows you to not only be the actor, but you're the actor, the director, the producer, and in a way, somehow I fell into painting, and I fell in love with it.
It's a different kind of putting yourself on the line.
It is,
An
in a way.
actor or a painter.
Yes, a painter really, he does have it's a really an ongoing kind of responsibility, because you do look at art, and you do look at all of art, and in fact in all of art I try to incorporate the things I love. It could be Benin sculpture, Giacometti, but in
Lipschitz. I know you were
Lipschitz.
influenced by Lipschitz. He was a friend of yours, Jacques Lipschitz.
Yes, I had the great privilege and the pleasure of meeting with him many times and discussing. Of course, it was many years ago, but it was a very, very special moment, because the man gave me a sense of the depth in his person.
Did the sculpture come as an influence of that?
I had started doing sculpture actually much earlier. And when I had the opportunity to meet Lipschitz, because he had a studio near Bard College.
I see.
And I went to visit him, and I just knocked on his door. I had no introduction. I wanted to meet the man who'd created these wonderfully strong images that I loved.
And I mean, your images are really strong, and you've been, our time is up. It's always up.
Oh, right.
So fast.
Oh, it's
well,
been
I'm
so
finally
much fun.
getting you talking. Thank you. Thank you for being with us, Michael Lawrence, and I'm sorry, we'll just do some close-ups on your sculpture. And thanks for writing. Keep writing to 520 South Grand. We'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles. He gave me this rhapsody.